yourself at home, do your do. Welcome to my pad, this your lab. Go create your move. I got a crib by the water. Say me casa, su casa. It feel like Casablanca. Shawty, you my little mama. I got a crib.
What's good, everybody? It's 99 miles per hour with Percy Garner, and I'm excited about our guest today. But before we get to our guest, I just want to remind everyone that I do have a merch store. All the proceeds go to students that are trying to attend college and helps them with their funds there. So if you want to help a student out, go ahead and purchase some of the merch. And then also my Discord community, where it's focused on baseball. But if you just want to join and talk about anything, you're free to do that as well. All the links will be down in the description. So if you have any questions or anything about pitching or beyond, that's the place to go. All right. Without further ado, I want to get to our sponsor. And without them, this podcast will not be possible. So thank you to Peterman Plumbing. And this next guy, the guest I want to introduce today, which I didn't know about this until I was doing a little bit of research last night. But I knew this part. I mean, he throws harder than me. And but the second part is he made his debut 5 days before me, which is very unfortunate. And he's younger than me. So all bad things in my favor. But on a serious note, this person I played a lot of baseball with when I first got to the Indians or Guardians. And it was just great to meet someone who shared my faith, and I was able to, live with and kind of learn some things from, and also see his marriage and relationship with his wife. And I just kind of admired that. And also his approach to the game, which we're going to get into a lot today. That's what we want to focus on a lot. But we're going to talk about, the team he likes in the NFL. And we'll also talk about, this is going to be another year of spring training because he's still in professional baseball. Unlike me, I'm a citizen. What do they call that? I'm a civilian. Now I'm a civilian now. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Ben Heller. How we doing, Ben?
Hey, Percy, thanks for having me. Excited to join the show. I just got to say, I may have you beat in velocity and debut time, and I'm a little bit younger, but your sinker definitely is nastier than mine. So you got me there. If I could have your sinker, I would trade everything else for that. So
hey, I like to hear that. I did see that that pitch you posted on your Instagram where it says the nastiest pitch you ever threw.
Yeah,
I mean, you weren't lying.
That was a Percy Garner sinker right there.
There we go.
I pulled that one out of the hat or something because I can't throw that consistently. But no, last year was the first year I was even throwing sinkers. So because I was always like a low slot four seam guy, kind of like the pitch up in the zone type of approach. But with Tampa Bay last year, they were like, you should try throwing the sinker, and so I kind of switched over to that and. I liked it. I mean, I feel like it kind of frees you up to attack the zone a little more. So I think you were maybe a little bit ahead of your time because, like, when you were doing that, the four seam ride carry approach was all the rage. But I feel like now, the game's starting to swing back in the other direction where sinkers are coming back in style a little bit.
Well, good thing I'm retired. No.
Hey, maybe a comeback in the works.
I can barely walk, but but I want to point out one thing though, because I think when we were playing in Akron together with the Rubber Ducks, I feel like didn't you have some run on your four seam, a little bit arm side run?
Yeah. I've always had good amount of arm side movement. It was kind of just like a matter of like, is it going to be like run and carry or run and sink? Where it used to be, sort of like run and carry, trying to like get up and in on guys. Now it's more of like trying to get underneath barrels. So just because my arm slot, like a low 3/4 arm slot. So the natural arm side run has always been there, but I think it's just been like an evolution of how do I want to try and get the vertical movement to best play for my strengths.
Yeah. And I've always kind of messed with that. And I would say later in my career, I got better at when I threw arm side. If I wanted to, get that reaction from the left-handed hitter where they moved out of the way, I would get more, I guess, horizontal movement on that. I didn't know how to I knew how it felt when I threw it, and I could repeat that. But it's not like something I can go, hey, kid, if you want this to do this, I can teach you how to do that. I don't know how, I couldn't get it translate it, but it would just happen. And I'm like, okay, that's how that feels.
But
when I threw,
that might be the prettiest pitch in baseball though. That front hip two seam to a lefty. Like if you could just throw that every time, I guess you'd be like Greg Maddux or Bartolo Colon. But no, you like, I remember like back, in high A, double A, triple A when we played together, like just watching your sinker, like especially from your arm slot, because you were a traditional over the top slot, and just like for you to be able to get that much movement on it, like I just remember thinking like, how does that work? And that was kind of before like the era of TrackMan and like slow motion cameras, to where now, I feel like teams and pitching coaches are like designing these pitches like scientists in a laboratory. Like they're engineering the pitches to move however they want, which is why you see just absolutely insane pitch movements every day on Pitching Ninja. But back when we were coming up, we weren't blessed with all that technology, so we just had to figure it out the old fashioned way. Just play catch, look how the ball moves, and try to repeat it.
Exactly. And I did make an appearance on Pitching Ninja, I believe, one time. And I think it was on my strikeout with Max Kepler. It was one of those. It wasn't that pretty of a front hip two seam, so I'm kind of like, dang, why didn't he do my other ones? But anyways, but I'm glad we got to talk about that. I love, which we're going to see, because I'm going to dive into that a little bit later too. But I wanted to kind of ask you how, because obviously you've been a professional baseball player for going on 11 years, and are you down in spring training now? You just haven't started. You're just
I'm actually on a pit stop right now in Charlotte, North Carolina, training at Tread Athletics. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
I'm familiar with their YouTube channel.
So they put out a ton of great content, which is how I first, kind of got introduced to them, like probably many of their athletes. But I've been working with them for like 3 years now. And actually I came down here when I was at like my absolute last chance of continuing to play, when I had been out of the game for like 2 years, just constant injuries. Teams weren't calling, there were no job opportunities, but I still had a desire to play, wanted to keep working. So came down here for like about 6 months actually, and just kind of reworked my mechanics a little bit, kind of just figured out like what was going wrong, why was I always hurt. Spent a bunch of time just figuring that out, changed my routine a little bit. And that's really what I think kind of led to this sort of late career resurgence, I guess, if you want to call it that. But that was 2 years ago. So now I've just kind of stayed training with them remotely, but now trying to just get locked in here before spring training for a week, and then ready to go with the Pittsburgh Pirates this year. So new team, new year, new team. That's kind of been my story here the last few years, but I love it.
Yeah, I kind of regret. I don't want to say I regret signing with the Orioles, but I think the Pirates were they were interested in me long before the Orioles were, but the Orioles just offered more money, so I went there. But that's one thing I looked at. I think when you kind of get in that position, like later in your career, once you hit free agency, like whether it's major league free agency, well, that's a whole different animal. I haven't really experienced that, where you're like a bona fide big league stud looking at a multi-year deal. But for a lot of guys like us who, you're kind of like journeyman more or less, like throughout your career, you're going to run into free agency at some point, and trying to evaluate like which opportunities are the best is definitely a challenge. And like, weighing the different pros and cons of different opportunities is like, I guess something you can only really learn from going through it. You feel like you might understand what you want in a team or an opportunity, and it might seem like one place is the right way to go, but in hindsight, you feel like maybe you should have considered some different factors or whatever. But can't live with regret, though. I mean, it is what it is. Yeah, no regrets. But I mean, how's that? With the family, is do they travel down with you to spring training now, or you go solo so you can focus, or how's that work?
Yeah, no, my family comes with me everywhere we go. Well, not on road trips during the season, but they'll be with me in spring training, and then into the season, wherever sort of the home base is, whatever team I'm playing for, we'll kind of set up a home there where the family will be. If I had to do a whole season apart from my family, I don't think I'd still be playing. So it definitely helps me sort of separate, baseball from home and kind of turn the page. It's obviously challenging in some ways, but I also feel like it helps sort of get away from the game when I'm at home. And most athletes, most baseball players kind of eat, sleep, and breathe their sport, and it's hard to sort of turn your mind off and separate that. You're just brewing over the mistakes, thinking about what you need to do differently, losing sleep at night. So I actually feel like having the family with me is a huge benefit with that. And just, I don't want to miss my kids growing up. My kids are 2 and 4 years old now. So every week it seems like they're doing something different, and I want to be a huge part of their lives. So yeah, that's a non-negotiable for me.
I agree. It was hard when I started out my career and then being away from the family. So whenever we can be together, especially since I got signed with the Indians, that was a huge blessing. But
yeah,
I kind of want to. So I had my friend Jesse Biddle on the podcast a little bit ago, and we were talking about his approach to pitching and just baseball and fitness in general. I would describe him as just balls to the wall, work as hard as possible, not always the smartest way possible, but he's never going to be accused of not working hard. And I think he would agree. I mean, he's probably way smarter now in his career, now that he's played. But when I'm talking about early on in our career, he was going hard, and sometimes to his own detriment. For you, on the other hand, I wasn't with you at the beginning. I mean, you were drafted in 2013, and 15 is when I played with you when we started. And I would say you always had like an interesting approach, and I know it's changed. I'm assuming it's grown, and the way you look at certain things is a little bit different, especially once you got injured and had to get Tommy John. I know that's probably impacted a lot of things, but I kind of want to, because I was going to get into the Packers and stuff, but whatever. I really want to get into this.
Yeah.
So for me, I knew, working out, getting stronger would help me, and I knew flexibility was important. But I never quite thought of it like I think you did later in your career, where you're looking at your movements, the way your body moves, where your weak points may be, flexibility and the range of motion and all that. I guess for the audience that is really interested in that, or maybe never thought of it like that and just think, hey, throw hard and you'll throw harder eventually. How can you explain, or, just share with us, I guess, your philosophy and what you've learned from Tread Athletics, and just even where you did your rehab with Milwaukee Sports Performance. Just share with us like what you've learned and over the years of this 11-year career.
Yeah, I mean, I think from sort of like, a high level overview, baseball is very different than a lot of sports in the sense that just being bigger, faster, and stronger doesn't necessarily translate to more success. Well, both in pitching and in hitting, but everything I say is gonna be from the pitching side. But what really matters is movement efficiency. So it's, I think about, watching golfers swing. Like you see golfers on TV who are sometimes like the smallest guys, but they can drive the ball the furthest. And same is true with pitchers. You see pitchers of all shapes and sizes who can create high velocities. And the reason for that is because of movement efficiency. And so I kind of understood that early on, like I'd say in college when I started to get serious about baseball, and I went down the Eric Cressey rabbit hole, which he was like one of the pioneers of baseball strength and conditioning, back back in like 2010 timeframe when there really wasn't much information out there on pitching development. He was one of the only guys sharing information, and it was a lot different than what I had been taught by like my high school, athletic director who was in charge of the lifting program, where he was just programming squats, bench press, and bicep curls. And I kind of started to understand like, okay, pitching is an extremely nuanced movement. It's a specific sport. And so we need to train our bodies to be able to do the very specific task of pitching a baseball as hard as possible. So there's kind of been evolutions throughout the journey. That's not at all to say that strength doesn't matter. Strength matters massively. And early in my career, college and early pro ball, I still put a ton of effort into lifting heavy, trying to gain weight, like gain muscle mass, trying to, become more explosive. But I think you kind of hit a point of diminishing returns where the spending more time trying to increase your deadlift from 400 pounds to 450 pounds is not really going to make you a better pitcher. But what is going to make you a better pitcher is, finding mobility restrictions and allowing you to get into better positions on the mound that can help you stay healthier, can help you throw harder with less effort. And so I would say I did sort of have a shift in my, my training and my mindset, probably around the time that I had Tommy John, which is 2018. And I realized like I'm plenty strong. I've thrown a baseball upper 90s. I think I touched triple digits once or twice. But I realized like I didn't need to deadlift any more weight than what I was doing. But I definitely had a lot of restrictions and bad movement patterns, which are what most likely caused my injuries in the first place. And so that kind of set me down a path of, several years and still on it to this day of basically just constantly trying to find any sort of weak links in the chain. I think the pitching delivery has been compared to cracking a whip. So if you've ever seen a whip move in slow motion, it's almost like a wave, where every segment of the whip needs to move before the next segment does, and it can't jump in order. Like it has to be a very smooth transition of energy. And that's kind of the way I see the pitching delivery. It needs to start from the lower half, then transition up to the hips, through the core, through the shoulders, to the elbow, to the hand. Like every piece needs to be in the right sequential order. And you need the right mobility abilities in order to let that happen naturally, like smoothly. So it's been a journey, and I'm still nowhere near perfect. I think part of what has sort of drawn me to this approach is that I'm a very naturally tight athlete, or tight moving athlete. You can think about like on one hand, sort of like the Gumby players who you might know, you look like a baby giraffe out there, joints hyperextending, and guys who can look like they should sprain an ankle, but they never do, like guys who are made of rubber. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have really tight movers, like almost like an offensive lineman, like they're just like a big ball of muscle. Which I'm not saying I'm a big ball of muscle by any means, but I'm definitely a tighter mover. So it's kind of just about like, moving me back towards more of like a neutral state of being able to move and just finding the deficiencies in my body basically. So yeah, that's kind of the approach that I've taken from a general overview, but it's always evolving. I'm always trying to learn, always trying to pick people's brains. I'd say that's kind of another piece of the puzzle that's been huge in my career, is that I've never been married to any certain philosophy or idea. I feel like I'm always trying to learn more. I'm always open to new ideas. I'm always trying to find, who's the next thought leader in the industry, who's really smart, who's doing exciting stuff right now. Like, what can I learn from them? And I feel like just that mindset of always trying to learn and get better has allowed me to continue to get better for this whole time.
I mean, that's dope. I could see, I wish I would have kind of concentrated on that, because I would say I was a flexible athlete in most areas, but the areas that I was kind of weak in, the efficiency movement or just range of motion, came back to haunt me in the areas that ended my career, so to speak, in my knees and meniscus. And there's just certain things that I didn't have knowledge of, but I didn't really kind of go searching for it, kind of like how you did. And, I was always afraid of Tommy John. I remember we would always, in Akron, I remember we'd go back and forth because, we were pitching really well. I mean, the whole bullpen was in Akron. But I know, I would come in and then you would come in and close it. And I just felt like, okay, if we are in a position to win the game, I'm going to come in and then Ben's going to come in and the game's going to be over. And we were throwing so hard at that time. And me and you would always come in and be like, hey man, how's your elbow? And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I might have Tommy John here soon. You're like, yeah, me too. I feel like we're going to, because I don't want to throw any manager under the bus, but especially when I got to AAA, and I've said this multiple times, and I feel like it is throwing Chris Trimmy under the bus, but he just threw me to death. Is basically what I would call it. I love him, and it's just different when you come from AA, and they're not. Yes, they want to win, but they're more focused on making sure their product is safe and not going to be injured, as opposed to when I got to AAA and it was they threw me out there 3 days in a row before, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, I'm like, I mean, Carsey came and got me one time, like, Purse, get warm, and I'm like, he's like, no, seriously. I'm like, oh snap, okay, but. It was the downside of pitching well. Like if you're pitching well, you're going to pitch a lot, and your arm's probably going to start hurting at some point. Yeah, I had thrown 90 innings as like basically I mean, in Akron I threw some longer innings, but for the most part I was a closer. Once you got traded away, and I threw over like 93 innings in the regular season, not including the postseason, as like a closer. And I'm like, I think that's a lot, right? So I got shut down early, but I just never looked or wondered like, hey, why does this hurt? I just said, oh, well, it's going to hurt. So even though we don't want to live with regrets, I do kind of wish I would have took that approach, kind of how you're taking now. But, now I'm just a dad. So, I don't worry about things that hurt. It's going to be a given.
Yeah. Welcome to getting old where everything hurts. But, no, I mean, I think, as much as you think about what if you would have, tried to look into how you could prevent that injury, I think to a certain extent, a lot of it is unpreventable. Like you can do everything in the book, or just look at someone like Jacob deGrom, someone who has perfect mechanics. He's incredibly flexible. He's basically, if you could draw a perfect pitcher from scratch, he would be it. But he still got hurt. So, there's no way to say that you could just prevent everything. I think the way I saw it is just, how can I stack the odds in my favor to give me the best chance to stay healthy and pitch at a high level for as long as possible. But I mean, hey, I'm sure I've made many mistakes in the way that I've trained, or, certain things that I've done throughout my career. So I don't think anybody's perfect. I think it's just about trying to grow and move forward from where you're at right at the moment.
Well, I appreciate that. But, you made me feel better. So thank you so much. But but I see absolutely. You made a good point. I mean, DeGrom is insane, but I think I even made a YouTube video where I'm breaking down. I'm just like, this is ridiculous. But but
it does everything well. Everything's perfect.
It makes a lot of sense. Now, so I mean, you had a quick stint of how long were you with the Yankees?
Well, I was with them for, I guess, parts of 5 seasons.
Oh,
So
okay.
still, they were my main team. Main organization, like big league wise. So I got traded there at the trade deadline in 2016,
Yep.
and that's the year that I made my debut. And then I was there all the way through 2020. So I pitched in the big leagues in 16, 17, 19, and 20 with them. So kind of always up and down, just kind of always like battling for that roster spot. But I mean, tons of awesome moments that came out of that. I got added to a playoff roster in 2019, which was cool. Didn't get to pitch in the playoffs, but I mean, just like being on the roster, being like in that atmosphere was really cool. So yeah, a lot of great memories from that time.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
So I guess, before we wrap up, I kind of want to just talk about, because I'm fascinated. Obviously, I love baseball, but my newfound like obsession, and you were talking about it, complimenting the quality of this podcast. But I'm curious now when people get into content creation, what their experience is. And specifically, you're kind of in the same space as me when, you're kind of talking about baseball. You're doing it a little bit different. But now, obviously, you're a full-time baseball player, not a full-time content creator.
Okay.
But I'm just curious of how your experience went when you're, making content, whether that's Instagram, Twitter, and kind of just share, like, what made you like, okay, I think I can do this. I think I can get in front of a camera and talk about pitching. And I guess how's that gone in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, I think sort of one of my like core values, or I guess like my big why, like from an early age, sort of when I felt like, God put a vision in my heart of like playing Major League Baseball someday. Like when I was in high school, that was sort of the vision. And a big reason why was like to be able to use that platform and opportunity to help others, like, whatever that may look like, whether it's serving others or helping financially in some situations. But as I've, played longer and just gained more knowledge and more experience, I kind of started to realize like I have a lot of knowledge to offer the next generation, things that, like, if I were a current high school player or younger, I think I would be really interested to learn from someone with my own experiences now. So I kind of went at it from that angle where I just wanted to share things that I've learned, things that I've found helpful, interesting stories. There hasn't been like any sort of, really good like structure to it, or there's been no way of monetizing it really at all. So that wasn't really a factor for me. It was really just kind of about sharing what I know, sharing my story, trying to engage with community, people who sort of resonated with what I was sharing. But I would say like the biggest challenge, obviously, as you know, is staying consistent with it, which in the world of content creation is everything. So I kind of go through phases, when I'm feeling like really inspired or driven, feeling like I have something to share, I'll put it out there and see what happens. And then, there's periods of times where I just don't feel like doing anything for that and kind of just want to get away from social media, live in real life and just not think about that sort of stuff. So that's kind of the approach I'm taking, which is obviously different than most. But yeah, I think the big reason why for me is to just sort of share with younger generations of baseball players and hopefully, pass along some of the things that I've learned and really cool experiences along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of share that same sentiment. I mean, I never thought I've always wanted to be a YouTuber. And I wouldn't say always, I would say since early on in my professional baseball career. But I never had the courage to actually, do it. It's good to hear your perspective. And yeah, I'm kind of the same. I'm like really inspired and driven to do some things. And then I'm just like, it's so easy to say, I'm not earning anything from this. And I really don't have I've got out with some things I want to share, but then when you learn something new, then you're like, oh, okay, here's something else I can share with, the people who care to listen. So I share that with you. And I also think it's ultra competitive. Obviously baseball is competitive. There's not many people who make it, but I feel like I always wish I would have started like in 2011. But it's pretty crazy.
And I just think I think the process of actually creating high quality content is extremely time consuming, challenging. Like, it is such a grind. There is definitely some parallels to baseball, just like the time that you have to put in, the effort, like the attention to detail. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely not easy. I wouldn't say to make it in the content creation world. Like, and I mean, I wouldn't even know. Like, I barely scratched the surface of any of this. But I think probably just like baseball though too. Like, what if you do put the work in? Like, it's there for the taking.
Oh, definitely, and the consistency, and actually, it's almost like the same what you talked about with baseball. A lot of these people who have done well now, I would say maybe 10 years ago, you didn't have to do all this, research and caring about thumbnails as much. But now that there's so much competition out there, everyone's pulling for everyone's attention. I think, we already talked about consistency. That's huge. But I think now you have to be a lot more strategic, depending on, the genre or the topic you're talking about. So it's a challenge, and I just love to see people try it. But I think also sometimes I just love not even the end product. It's just actually doing it. All the stuff that you said is like a grind. I'm a nerd when it comes to the camera. I just got a new one. Hopefully you guys can tell. And all that, I just love setting it up and, being the operator. Like, I control the live stream at church and, just kind of doing all that stuff. It's fun for me sometimes. And, that's when I kind of like, oh, we're going to do this. But no, I appreciate you for sharing. Now,
I mean, I think that's like the mark of a true, of something that you love. You said you enjoyed the process of creating it. And I think that's such a good point, because that's probably the number one thing that I would say has helped me play baseball this long, is that I truly love the process of getting better. Like, I love going into the gym and, trying out a new exercise or new drill, or like learning a new pitch. It's not just about those moments pitching on a big league mound, because I have 50 career innings in the big leagues, 50 innings, which, I mean, I'm proud of it. I feel like it's a fair amount, but like, I have hundreds of thousands of throws that I put in outside of that. I have who knows how many hours of time spent. Like, that time in the big leagues, just a tiny, tiny sliver of the amount of time and effort that I've put into this whole thing. And if I didn't truly love the process of actually doing it, then I would have been done a long time ago. And so I think that probably holds true for anything, just like you said, with creating the content, enjoying the process of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just know it's a struggle for me to be consistent, and I always relate it to baseball. But I felt like I wasn't always consistent in baseball. I would maybe watch Jose Fernandez throw, rest in peace, and I'd be like, I can't wait to pitch tomorrow. And then there's some days where you got to get a 15-hour bus ride to Portland, Maine, and I'm just like, I think I just want to go home and be with my kids. And once that started to creep in, I was like, maybe it's time to call it quits. But I enjoyed, your unique perspective. That's why I wanted you on the show. And, I always like hearing from people who have different, perspectives and different outlooks and different approaches. So thank you for sharing that. But before we get out of here, so we are going to close, but I want to say the one thing I was curious about was, you never struck me as someone, when you get to the big leagues, you're going to get like a crazy car or crazy house or anything crazy like that. You just don't strike me as that person. But what is something that you don't mind spending money on?
Good quality food. My wife makes fun of me because I get like the eggs that are like $7 a dozen at the store. So I have zero guilt buying the most expensive, high quality food possible. So, but you're actually right. I drive like our old F-150. We still live in like a super average neighborhood. So, I mean, it's that type of stuff doesn't excite me, but I could get excited for like a good, $40 steak from the grocery store.
There we go. Now, do you cook it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. Well, yeah, my wife and I both like to cook. I usually do the grilling and that type of stuff, and she'll make other meals. Actually, she's really into making sourdough bread lately. So that's make those good quality eggs in the morning, throw them on a sourdough loaf. Oof, man,
that is hilarious. Krista's doing the same thing.
Oh man, I feel like that's probably like every wife in their 30s. Like that's just the go-to hobby these days. I see it, and now my Instagram feed is filled with sourdough recipes too. I don't know how they know. Like they just like that's my wife's thing, but somehow they hijack my Instagram feed. So,
oh my gosh, that's awesome! I can't wait to get home and tell Krista that. Yeah. But no, man, as always, I appreciate you. Like you said, we do need to keep in contact more often, as well as some of our other friends. JP, we got to check and see how he's doing. I'm sure you probably are talking to JP, but I'll be looking out for you. I'm assuming, I'll have to, come watch you when you come play Cleveland. And I mean, Pittsburgh isn't that far away either. So that is true. I'm a Steelers fan, so I go to a lot of Steelers football games. Well, not a lot. I usually go to one a year, but
okay,
it's really close. So I forgot about that, and I've never been to the Pirates baseball stadium. So is it still PNC?
Oh man, yeah, I've heard PNC. Yeah, I haven't been either, but I've heard nothing but great things. So you should come out for sure.
All right, well, we'll be praying for you, man. Hope you big and healthy through spring training. Hopefully you make the squad, and then we can come out and see you. But again, appreciate you coming, man.
Thanks, Percy.
Yeah, man. I guess to all those who
absolutely, this is fun.
Yeah. Appreciate everybody who's coming back every year that I make one episode. But no, I hope you guys are enjoying the guests that we bring on. We're gonna have a focus of pitching, baseball, professional sports, all that stuff, and we got some more guests coming on. So. I also forgot to say this at the beginning, but make sure you like and subscribe and make sure you check out mine and Ben's socials will be below. So his, if you want to reach out to him, ask him questions about, his journey, his approach. If you want to know more about what he's got going on, make sure you give him a follow. And like I said, everything will be down in the description. And we'll see you next Tuesday. Peace.
I got a crib by the water. Say me casa su casa. It feels like Casablanca. Shawty, you my little mama. I got a crib by the water. Say me casa su casa. It feels like Casablanca. Shawty, you my little mama. She be on that Henny. I like that Corona. I love her smell.